Okay. Welcome to our Tuesday afternoon meeting where we're looking over budget issues. So I'll just turn it over and go ahead.
Yeah, so this starts our budget workshops for trying to put together some of the assumptions that we will be using or that you would recommend we use.
Don't forget to identify yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to identify myself. Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director. So hopefully we can use this workshop session to basically give me some guidance on some assumptions to use for the 2025 budget as for the revenue area, particularly right now. And so the first thing I'd like to go over is that there's a sales tax chart that that I think you're used to seeing that I've been presenting, showing where the comparison to the prior year's month and where we're at. And I went ahead and estimated for the rest of the year, looking at using the assumption of a 9% decline in our sales tax because that's what it was for the month of June. Those are June sales taxes dispersed in August. And so that brings us to, if I were to do that estimate, a total for the year of about almost 11.5 million. I budgeted 11.9 million. So in this next budget amendment, I'm going to recommend that I decrease the 2024 budget for sales tax approximately $439,000. So then using that data, I did a couple of different scenarios for 2025. And I said, what if we had a 2% growth over what I'm estimating for 2024 to account for inflation, because inflation has been running a little bit higher than 2%, but if we achieve what the the Federal Reserve wants to get back to a 2% inflationary level, that would be approximately $11.7 million budget for sales tax, which will be lower than what I've budgeted this year. And then I have another alternative for 2025, assuming no growth, basically status quo, based upon what I've estimated for 2024, $11.5 million. So a lot to take in. We are still doing an analysis. Commissioner Weber, you had asked for us to look at, can we get some analysis of where we're seeing the declines? And so we're still working on that, going through it, putting together a thorough analysis by types of industry and by month. So we haven't completed that. We're getting close, but I didn't have it ready yet. Just, an anecdote from the Washington Economic News. They showed, the last report that we got in August showed that new vehicle sales in Washington increased in July, but we're down over the full year. So I'm not sure what my analysis will show on that, but I'll wait to.
Yeah, because I was talking to the PFD and they've actually seen an increase in receipts. So that he was surprised that we were down. I said, well,
Yeah.
all I can tell you is that we track what the state sends us and it's less than what they were expected.
One of the areas that I'm looking at in this analysis is we receive a full portion of the sales tax allocation for unincorporated areas. And we share in the sales tax with the cities. So I'm looking to see if that might be part of our problem is the unincorporated area sales tax has declined over this year versus last year. So
Okay.
that may be one of our areas, but I want to confirm it up with the data once I have it complete. So basically on sales tax, I believe we need to budget prudently, conservatively, and so I'm looking for suggestions or your input on whether I should use a growth factor or no growth factor.
I think for planning purposes, we should be conservative and just pencil in the no growth factor. We do know that industrial construction has been completed at both paper mills. So the more we've looked at it, the more I'm convinced that the end of those construction sales tax increases that we saw the last couple of years is that's the one variable that seems to have really changed. So
Yeah, some of my
I mean,
preliminary,
so that makes sense. So this would take us back to kind of where we were before the industrial expansions.
Mhm.
The advantage of being conservative on the sales tax is that it does reflect inflationary growth, and that builds in a little bit of an extra cushion. Because we may very well collect more than the no growth
Yeah.
option.
So use the
Unless-
11.5.
Unless the incredible federal spending that's been going on the last couple of years doesn't trigger a recession, then of course all bets are off.
Mhm.
Having talked about that, that feeds into the idea that we'll have one, right? We better not talk about it.
It'll be blamed on you
Yeah,
because you talked about it.
yeah. All
Yeah.
indications are, of course, that the Federal Reserve is going to reduce interest or their rates possibly as many times as 3 times, maybe before the.
As long as it takes to get the current administration reelected. Perhaps I'm being a little cynical.
Yeah. So,
I think you're hearing the conservative approach is fine.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that is one item. The next item is looking at the other item that is one of, and I'm just concentrating right now on general fund, basically looking at the revenues. And I gave you a handout on property tax, general fund. And so in 2023, our revenue was 19.6 million. In 2024, we've budgeted 19.8 million. And I feel very comfortable that we're going to achieve that because we are seeing like 98, 99% collection year over year. So I am confident we'll bring that into at $19.8 million. For 2025, I was proposing basically my first start was no increase in the property tax rate, the 1% that we're allowed, but growth for new construction, which is similar to what 2023 was. So that was about $200,000 that brought in for our property taxes based upon the assessed values. So I think that's pretty conservative.
What will be interesting is that this next tax year will be the first year we have the new apartments out in Lexington fully taxed. They're close to 100 pretty nice apartments in Lexington built and opened up. River Villa, I think, Stone Villa, something like that.
Something like that.
You drive by it every day,
Yeah.
I think, when you come down West Side Highway, if you do that. And I mean, people don't qualify for subsistence if they're in those apartments. There is the Country Run just to the north. We've had that for quite a while, and that does have a lot of more affordable housing, but this other development is going to add, and that's all in the county. So
You're talking about the property tax because everybody pays property tax, okay?
well, but it's new construction. I mean, she's proposing we pay attention to new construction.
But new construction was this year,
Mm,
right?
mhm.
So the only thing we get next year
And it-
is whatever the 1% or, yeah, it just adds to the base.
Yeah.
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 I would be careful, you said the 1% rate, it's not a rate, the 1%,
Yes,
yeah, so
it's
Someone might-
1% over
Whatever
it's a
you-
1%
over-
net,
previous levy,
1% of the dollars collected.
right?
Right.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so the dollars collected more or less is approximately 20 million for us, so. But then I also need to alert you that I've done some preliminary numbers on current commitments for the collective bargaining agreements that were settled for those that were in the general fund, and I've estimated for those COLAs and benefits, about $700,000 increase to our budget for that. And then on the non-represented, I'm estimating just for increases related to step increases and things like that, about 500,000.
Medical care.
Yeah, medical, and so 500,000 without any COLA decision, because I don't have a COLA decision for non-represented yet from you. If I were to assume, and then I also just put for assumption purposes, a 3.5% COLA for non-represented, I think that number would be ballooned to more like about $1 million with the taxes and everything calculated on that. So, so I'm looking at potentially $1.7 million of additional expenses that we would be adding to the budget potentially. So.
And you're only talking about 200,000 from property taxes.
Right, right. So I'm concerned about that because that creates a drain on our reserve budget. If we were to budget for an increase of 1.7 and only have about 200,000 of new revenues from property taxes, and then I'm forecasting about a $500,000 or $400,000 decline in budget for my sales tax. So I'm worrisome about that. So
you're giving us a heads up that your first run may look a little challenging.
Challenging, yes, challenging. A bit of good news. I do have some preliminary numbers, but of course these are not final yet for our financials. The general fund for 2023 has a total fund balance on a GAAP basis of about a little over $22 million. And so the good news is when we started 2024 budget, that's pretty much what I have in the budget for beginning fund balance for 2024. So it lines up very well.
Yeah.
But even then, 2023, we had a negative change in our fund balance for that year of about almost close to $1 million.
Yeah.
So I need to go through and basically forecast out 2024. But I haven't had the opportunity to do that yet. So, and we're working on our amendments for 2024 right now. And we've been looking at revenues, and preliminarily, we've come up with, which is great news. It's about, and taking into consideration, making an adjustment on sales tax. We're looking at booking additional budget of $1.4 million for the general fund. But most of those are related to things like grants and contracts in the general fund for some of the different areas. Some of it is related to investment earnings, interest earnings, which that I'm also a little worrisome about what we're expecting to see for 2025, being that interest rates may be coming down.
It's been a good year this year.
Yes, and last year. Last year, we exceeded our budget on these preliminary numbers for the general fund of about $1 million, $1.2 million. So I don't think we're going to see that.
Rate market goes.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see that in 2025.
Well, it is interesting if the interest rates go down as you suggest. The hope is that that does trigger
Economic.
home construction particularly.
Mhm.
And I know that the city of Longview has a 52 lot subdivision planned up on Columbia Heights that had been approved back in they had 5 years to work on it. They hadn't started it yet because the interest rates went up. And so that could be unleashed. And again, that will not be affordable housing in that neighborhood. They have another 40 lot subdivision that was approved on Mount Solo, on the lower slopes on the Ocean Beach side of Mount Solo. And again, that would trigger, we know Castle Rock's big development includes quite a few new homes.
Yeah.
And that hasn't taken off yet. So that's going to be another boon. North Lexington has 80 homes that haven't been built yet. Again, they're just waiting for those interest rates to kick in. And of course, there's stuff going on in Woodland, a lot of proposals in Woodland. So
Yeah.
that could trigger, low enough interest rates could trigger increased property tax revenue because more construction. I don't know, Mike, I don't know if Columbus got anything underway. Smaller ones, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Rates could trigger a little bit of commercial too.
Mhm.
Just in our conversations with the latest on the hotel thing, they're just kind of watching rates, and if it got to a certain point, it would certainly help trigger.
I'll be going,
That's the only
The
thing.
thing to keep in mind is housing is what you call consumptive. So we may get more housing and our tax base goes up, but the housing means more expenses, police, fire, schools, so forth. While construction of a business is far more useful from a
Well,
tax base, and that's
I totally agree with you because that also, depending on the business, brings in people from outside the county spending money here.
yeah.
I mean, you see it down in Mike's area with people coming into minimums. They have ships. I mean, the paddle wheels that come up, people bringing their money in, not staying. So, yeah.
Yeah, then one of the questions I have for you, how much do we have in the banking of the property tax?
So I think we have approximately, after last year's, we have about 400,000 in the general fund.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Because
could-
I think we banked the 1% from last year, which was a little over 200,000, and you already had banked some.
Had one from before, yeah.
Yeah, so it's approximately 400,000.
Yeah, and we have to know what we're gonna do in advance so that the property tax can be prepared properly. I'd also like to say it would be a disaster if we didn't give the non-represented groups the same treatment. So I would scratch out that 500,000 line and say it's gonna be 1 million.
Yeah.
And and then I don't know where we are on the ARPA money. Are we considering? I mean, we're really spending the ARPA money judiciously, but some of it can be used to offset. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that's another place to consider if there was a project that's too blue sky. And then we can always do something. The landfill tends to be somewhat immune to a downturn. And what's behind my mind here is that I always see a glass is half empty, not half full. And so that's my problem. But the latest numbers I saw on the debt, the credit card debt is pretty immense in this country. Do I remember? It's over $1 trillion, I think.
I don't know, I don't remember the number, but it has grown.
And we don't have the proper moral fiber that says it's okay to stiff people, charge up the card, and then declare bankruptcy. Well, the bankruptcies are going to grow based on everything I've seen, and that's not going to help us at all here. So I think your earlier admonition about a month or 2 months ago that says, don't be adding staff unnecessarily. And the
Right.
key word is always unnecessarily.
Yeah.
For me, it's always necessary for my staff, but for his staff, I don't think so.
Yeah. I'm just,
Actually, as far as I'm concerned, they can cut my staff.
Yeah, well.
I won't have a use for it. Kathy, I want to double check that I heard you correctly. On your property tax analysis, you have a 200,000 gain on a $20 million balance. That would be the 1%.
well, basically,
The
I'm
growth.
using the growth in the construction that
Okay,
we've
so the
seen
200K
traditionally.
is growth. How much does the 1% we're allowed technically, how much does that generate? Is that
Yeah.
another 200,000?
That's another 200,000.
So with the catch up, it's 600,000.
Potentially.
So I think we have, I think we're okay next year. I'm concerned about the years after that because we kick what we're doing if we don't get new business coming in, we're kicking the can down the road.
And you're anticipating our ending fund balance for this year will be in the $20 million category. 22, did you say? 22 million?
For 23, this is the preliminary
Right,
number.
right.
It's about $22.7 million.
2.7.
And that's very close to what I had projected the starting balance for 2024 budget.
And we've eaten into that by about $1.4 million.
I anticipate that we started the budget with a deficit based upon all positions being fully budgeted and all benefits being fully budgeted. And we traditionally don't spend everything on our salaries because we have vacancies during the year.
Mhm.
So I'm anticipating that we will have a deficit, a change in fund balance of a negative amount to the tune of $1 million to $2 million for 2024.
So that would still leave us with about $20 million in the ending fund
Yeah.
balance.
Yep.
So now we need the 2-month, the 8.2%, our required margin according to our own policy.
Right. And that's about approximately $7 million.
So we not only have 1 month, we've got 2 months, so 16.4%, and we still have more, and we can handle the expected deficit.
For 2024.
Okay. So you mentioned a deficit, we're spending down our reserves. Okay,
Mhm.
that's different than deficit spending.
Right.
Yeah,
We're spending our
'cause-
reserves down.
And the rainy day fund contribution,
Is included in that $22.7 million number.
And-
It's approximately, at the end of 2024, it'll be about $2.7 million
in the account.
in the account. And
And how-
that's included when I talk about our fund balance, because it's there for
And how much are we going to contribute to it?
approximately $550,000. Could be as much as 600,000. Last 2023's revenues, total revenues, was almost $61 million. And it's 1% of revenues.
Yeah.
And that emergency fund, if I remember correctly, requires a unanimous agreement to spend any of
use
it.
it.
That's
Mhm.
that's
To-
locked
To
away.
spend any of it requires
Spending of it.
unanimous board, and I don't think we yet would spend it. When we know we're not kicking the can down the road, that's when we spend it.
Well, if we get into a very deep recession, then,
And
we
have
get
no
into,
choices,
can we
yeah.
afford the basic services after we trimmed staff?
Exactly the point.
If
yeah.
we still need it, then we've got that
But
capacity, but
I don't recall there's a contribution also subject to can we not do a contribution?
does that require a unanimous vote? The contribution is
Yes.
set.
Okay.
The contribution
We did a
is
good
set,
job.
but you could elect not to do the contribution. But I believe the policy says that it would be unanimous for that as well. Yep.
Well,
So,
the healthy fund balance is timely. I mean,
yep,
I think the changes coming up to the economy are always around the corner. And so I don't know that we need to do anything super drastic now, but
well,
you're tracking it.
Yeah.
you will remember when we were taking money from the road fund for the general fund in
Oh, yeah.
property taxes.
It wasn't long
Because
ago.
things weren't imbalanced, and
Yeah, I had forgotten.
and then
about that.
the economy turned around and bubbled right along, and we also had a high degree of vacancies during COVID as well, kind of coincidental. I mean, our spending was down then, but yeah, so we
So-
built up. We were at one point it was like a 22% ending fund balance. But a lot of those vacant positions that created that have been filled. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So anyways, so I'm just presenting this because I think we should consider when we're looking at the levy, which is our property tax, looking at potentially in order to help us offset the commitments, the personnel commitments we have, that we may need to look at issuing, my recommendation is looking at the levy to take at least at a minimum the banked amount. So, But I gotta get my numbers. I don't have the assessment number. I don't have anything from the assessor's office yet. And so that discussion the decision has to be made by the November 12th public hearing. But I'm gonna bring it at a workshop as well prior to that.
So when you say the banked amount, is it? I know we did zero increase this year.
Yes.
We
Mhm.
did zero the previous year too, right? Aren't we 2 years into the bank?
No, the previous year was like a 0.5. It was an odd percent. It was 0.59. It wasn't the full 1%.
I think it was, yeah, because the inflation was, we had that option, I
Yeah.
think.
So anyway, so that's kind of where we're at.
Speaking of inflation with respect to this, that the banked account, that banked amount doesn't grow with inflation.
No, it doesn't.
No. So those are the things I wanted to present today, to just get thinking about revenues and what I would be using, and also if I can also get a commitment on the non-represented groups, like Commissioner Mortensen said, the 3.5%, because I'm going to need to start calculating all my expenses too, as in the next week or two.
I'd want to make sure Jessica is on board with that as the accurate amount.
Yeah, I've discussed this with her. I know she's on vacation this week, but I've discussed this with her as far as looking at what is more, the majority of the collective bargaining agreements are 3.5%. Not all of them, but the majority of them are.
Rick, you'll need to do a better job of coordinating with staff. When the commissioners take their vacations, everybody should be taking their vacations, right?
Yeah.
We have talked in the past, it's probably not appropriate or not timely enough now, but our health insurance costs are humongous. And I think there is money there still if we
Yeah.
go. I don't remember the numbers exactly. When I looked at them, I thought if we went self-funded, we could get by with very little risk and still break even. I use that, I do boundary analysis, and when I'm looking at something, I say, what happens if at the extremes? And I thought even at the extremes, we'd come out okay. But we wouldn't make anything, but if we looked at what was more probable, I thought we'd clear a fair chunk of money.
Yeah.
Like over $1 million. When you figure how much do we spend on health insurance, it's $1,600 a month times the number of employees would get you close to it.
No,
I think it's closer to 1850 now, isn't it?
No, it's closer right now. This current year, it's 1950.
Okay, let's
Yeah,
do
so
2,000.
2,000.
I'd like to go under on my
Yeah,
estimates.
I'm using 2,000 for next year.
Yeah.
Because that's what most of the collective bargaining agreements have in there,
Was
I remember
the
24
$50
I s-
increase per month.
I seem to remember when the Affordable Care Act went in, they made an assumption that $24,000 a year in healthcare would constitute a Cadillac plan, and they have to pay taxes on it. I have a feeling they've changed that amount, but we haven't heard that
It's
recently.
like
But
everything
no.
else, when the government gets involved, things get a little more expensive. You never catch up.
Yep.
Uh,
I don't think that's a bad point, though. I don't think we should just disregard not looking at self-insuring. I know my previous life, we just did the simple step of raising the deductible, but then the company would cover the raise, and it actually saved us a ton of money on premiums, and we never ever paid out what we could have fully paid out on the,
Yeah.
on the raise. So I don't think, we didn't know what the first year was gonna look like, and it turned out, wow, that worked out well. Now, there could be a bad year, obviously, but I don't think you should just throw away the idea of looking at self-insurance.
Oh, no, it's been, I'll skip that part, but thing that is maybe not well known is that you can self-insure to whatever probability you would like. We're now self-insured to a probability of 0 because we're paying somebody else to take the risk.
The risk,
But while they're taking the risk, they're going to the bank.
yeah,
And,
they don't work for free.
correct. But they don't work, and they also don't work as efficiently as
Yeah.
we would do.
And if we're working to at least break even, or at least plus administration costs or something, we can take a little more risk.
Right, and that gives you a lot more control over your future
Yeah.
also. Right now, every time we go to a meeting, it's like Kaiser's up by 10% this year, I think, or 9 something, and WCIF is not quite so much this time, but last time they were a lot higher than Kaiser. That would require you to put a little more pressure on HR.
One of the things I've always wondered about in terms of negotiating healthcare rates is why we don't form a co-op amongst all local government entities. You have a lot more potential customers, and that should give you more clout in negotiating with the providers, I would think. But apparently we prefer to allow the providers to divide and conquer. And
Well, there is.
because the smaller the entity, the more the relative costs are in providing the insurance. Right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's the whole purpose of insurance. You spread that risk over
Spread
an
the
ever
risk.
larger pool. But
Yeah, I don't think that quite holds here, but I'd have to stop and think a little bit about it. My gut says if it worked that way, things like the Affordable Care Act and all that would have played in substantially reducing costs. But in fact, our costs continue to go up regardless.
but a program like the Affordable Health Care, of course, says affordable when it's not affordable. And the expense is really high because we try to cover people who don't have the ability to contribute, who don't contribute anything.
I think part of the issue is, I'm probably stepping on thin ice here, but how many times did you go to the doctor when you were a kid? Not very frequently because it wasn't covered by insurance. Now people flood the emergency room because they have a cold or something like that. And that has taxed, that just has terrible repercussions. The way the law of large numbers works is really dramatic. For if you had 10 people in a pool and you added 10 more people, that's a huge difference. But once you have like 1,000 people in the pool, you don't get much for adding another 1,000 people on there. There's a telephony example of that. It's just the law of large numbers applies here.
Yeah.
Once you get to a certain size, after that, diminishing returns.
Our rates are probably based off the age of the commissioner, so we're in trouble.
No, you're going to be in great shape in January.
I won't be the youngest anymore.
Especially if those,
Oh, you might be the oldest. No,
I might be the
maybe
old-
not. I don't
I
know.
don't know. Did we give you kind of what you needed here?
Yeah.
Conservative on the other? Or-
Yeah, do you
actually
want me
kinda
to bring
conservative.
back the request for the COLAs for non-represented groups?
I'm sorry.
Do you want me to bring back to the table go ahead and use in my budget the 3.5% COLA for the non-represented groups? That's
I
what
think for
Jessica and I
now-
had
If that's
been,
consistent with
Yeah.
what Jessica's telling
Yeah.
you, yeah.
that's
yeah,
what
I'm
Jessica
fine.
and I had been talking about.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
if that's
The thing-
agreeable with the commissioners, that's what I'll put in the budget.
Okay.
The thing we ought to discuss maybe now is even, what's your inclination about the banking? Are we going to draw the 400 plus the upcoming 200?
I can circle back on that one, let y'all think about it a little bit more.
But we have to start talking about it
Mhm.
because we're going to have to
Right.
decide by November. And
Right.
this is the kind of thing where we might say something today, think about it and come back and say, well, I didn't really say that.
Yeah.
You know, it really depends on how much of an ending fund balance you want. If you're comfortable with 20, which is what she's expecting us to end in, we don't need we don't need to do the banking. We're in good shape.
Yeah.
But if you're worried that we're gonna go down to 16, I mean, even that's more than adequate for our 1 or 2 month reserve.
Right. And so I can bring that back. I can bring back
Yeah.
a forecast of, which is what I did last year, is forecast out 2024 for you to, based upon starting the year with about a $22 million fund balance.
Am I correct in assuming you'd prefer not to
Yeah. it's
dip
just-
into the
I was just
banking?
going to say, I'll answer Commissioner Morton's question. I would probably not vote for it.
Okay, let's
Just putting
assume,
more burden
yeah.
on the people out there is a struggle for me there. They're already burdened trying to buy food. They're burdened. I watch garbage rates. I watch everything just keep going up. We need to take some responsibility and wean ourselves and lean ourselves out a little bit. So that would be my take. I would probably not vote for it.
well, I'm okay with that. I'll support that.
Yeah, we have ample reserves. I mean,
Hmm?
we have ample reserves.
Yeah,
If we were sitting down close to zero, then it's probably a different conversation, but
Yeah.
You know, the second year I was in this job, we were having discussions. Dare we cut it to 8% as that 1 month cushion? I mean, the budget was that tight. And that was after we had offered early retirement and made, cut expenses by $1 million when 10 people took us up on that. I mean, if we dare get to claim the credit, we've had staff that's done an excellent job of building up this reserve in the last 8 years, for sure.
things are so bad that the Kelso crew is trying to dig holes to see if they can find any gold.
yeah, maybe they'll hit oil down there.
They think it's around this building. I don't understand that.
Maybe.
Yeah. I just, it's been my experience when you watch over the years that what drives the economy is the consumer and the businesses. And if you just keep burdening them, it's just counterproductive.
Yeah.
I said, what doesn't drive the economy is big government. And if we just keep padding ourselves,
We
It's
do drive the economy, but it's towards a
yeah, it's
cliff.
the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So we need to try and stay
Well,
out of the
remember
way as
the-
best we can and let them do what they do best.
Remember, the other way of looking at it is if we do indeed have ample reserves, we've overtaxed to begin with.
Yeah.
And we've already created that burden. So I think for now,
So I will bring back to you, showing you what I'm forecasting for 2024, where I think we're going to end up, just based upon preliminary numbers. I will do that so you can kind of see. I'm giving you what preliminarily the financials are showing for 2023, but I'll go ahead and do 2024.
I know we're always looking for savings and we don't talk about it much, but just the move with OPD, that's a savings around 80 grand a year. I mean,
Yeah.
and we're always looking for those type of.
We have to
things.
discount that a little bit because COG's rent is gonna go up, but we're the largest contributor to COG.
Well,
So
that's,
it's not the full 80%,
that's a
but we're gonna,
voluntary
but it's,
contribution. No,
well, you don't want to go there.
they just need to be reasonable.
Anyway, but there is a savings. There's no doubt about that.
And then we will start this week ends when the departments are finishing up their entry in Budget Boss for their budgets. So we'll be starting to look at those next week to see what they look like. And we'll start our workshops. I think the first one is October 2nd. And I haven't put the call out for the departments signing up for slots yet, but I will be doing that this week.
So are you getting any sense from staff that there are new initiatives that they're going to be suggesting? Or is it just simply going to basically roll over what we've been doing this past year?
I haven't spent much. Last week I was on vacation when they started doing their budget data entry. So I should have a better idea of that after I look at what they've put in, what they submit by this Friday.
And since the behavioral health tax hasn't been approved yet, we have to assume it won't be approved in terms of planning. Although I think we've told everybody the programs do have enough money to go to the end of next year. So
Yes.
we won't have to budget any cutbacks in those programs unless we want to.
No, for 2025, based upon the fund balance that's available in that tax, I had forecasted out that we would be able to continue through 2025 fully at status quo. And then we also have, it looked like a little bit even into 2026, there still would be some funds left.
It's about halfway through 2026, I thought.
Yeah,
Is it?
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
The other kind of hidden escalator are those formulas that we use to calculate some overhead costs. IT can take a big jump and we haven't really taken a step at this board. It's just, well, this is all we need to do the next year and it's got to go up another 16% or something like that.
Yeah.
And then the other one is for the benefits administration for all the various different funds to make sure we've got enough insurance. And then, of course,
risk
that
risk
overhead-
management is another one. Yeah.
the other overhead that pays for interdepartmental services, internal services, I think. we
Internal
call.
services, yeah. So I have a workshop set up where we will talk about all of those internal services departments so that you can see what those look like for IT, risk management, industrial accident. And we're I'm actually seeing, I've already put them all together because we've put them in the budget as estimates right now. And for example, the risk pool, it's like a 20% increase in their assessment again. So
How much?
20%.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've all seen insurance going up in the last
Yeah.
year and a half or so. I hope everybody's feeling it, not just people who turn a certain age. There's a little
One of the
amount.
things, IT is a good example of something that can be, it's been mismanaged for a decade or more. And it's just like with the Hall of Justice you've got accumulated deferred maintenance. And IT is very complicated in that decisions 15 years ago to buy PeopleSoft, horrible, right? And we've heard discussions recently that there may be better ways to go. Well, you start adding up the license fees, even the security thing that we use, for me, that's a pain and it doesn't do very much. I didn't want to get the Duo system, but we got it. And the question is, on any of these things for IT, if we're adding staff or adding stuff, we should look at it with an ROI viewpoint. Okay, so we're going to add a person here to solve this problem, and that will eliminate our dependency on that. So play it out. Is that a 1-year investment or a 3-year or 5-year? And I just know that we've been ordering new laptops. And do you need a new laptop? Not likely, right?
No.
Yeah, and I don't either. So I don't know who needs a new laptop out there. And of course, everybody gets the same, roughly the same issue, and that doesn't seem,
Well, I'm sure there are going to be at least 2 new laptops because there are going to be 2 new commissioners.
well, I'll tell you what.
No, I'm joking.
When I came on board, I had Karnofsky's grungy keyboard, and I used that for like 5 years or until, and I didn't say anything. Well, I did. I said, it's a grungy keyboard, but do you want a new one? No, it's working.
Mhm.
And then finally IT said, no, you're going to get a new keyboard. And I'm like, okay, but it wasn't a demand. I'm just saying, when we replace equipment, we do it far sooner than we would do it as individuals. How many miles on your truck, or how many hours on your excavator?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, my
No,
wife
no.
has been complaining about her iMac not working very well. It's
or-
2010
Yeah.
vintage.
yeah.
So there aren't any programs that fit on it anymore. So that's why it's
Now, one thing that softened the blow was that Microsoft did make a serious change that required new hardware, and that's for security, and I understood that part, but there may be things we can cut out. So my only point is, if you're going to bring someone else on board, tell me exactly what problem you're solving and why it's worth the extra expense.
Yeah. Just looking at this information here, it makes you a little concerned, but I know there's other things in. We signed up Mason County for the landfill, so there'll be some revenues coming in from that, and it's probably not the last place it'll come our way. We're looking at, they're in the process of working some numbers because striping has gotten so expensive. And what would it look like with our own? We may have some savings there. So it's, I think we know a lot of this stuff, and we're already trying to look at different, our people have been really good at looking at different areas where they can save something. So
well, I'm just grateful that the bonds we took out on the morgue are being paid off by all those training fees that all the other counties are flocking to
A good point.
utilize.
In case you didn't notice, there was sarcasm dripping all over the place.
That's an inside joke, right?
It's one of the things new commissioners have to deal with, is that you get all these insane promises, but nobody's really accountable for making them come true.
probably got more than you wanted today, didn't you?
Mhm.
It is a public meeting, so if anybody has any comments, we certainly welcome them. I don't know if we have anybody online that's done anything.
We've got 2 potentially critical personalities in the audience.
Yeah.
Who ought to let us know if they've got any advice or suggestions.
Did you have anything else?
No, I don't have anything else. This was all I wanted to go over. Was 2 of our major general fund revenues is our sales tax and our property tax.
Okay, and this really kicks off a pretty steady flow of meetings
Yes,
leading up to a
yeah.
public workshop in November.
Yep. And then we will have, before then, we'll have a budget amendment that we'll be presenting for 2024 on October, I think, October 15th, I think, if I have that date right. So,
Okay.
Yep.
Anything else, gentlemen? Okay, we will adjourn. Thank you.
thank you.